Is it still is it light there yet? Because it was a
No,
little bit
we
short.
are still dark in Sydney, and it's pretty cold over here. To be honest, you had a pretty brutal cold snap the last couple of weeks. So, bit of snow up in the Blue Mountains.
Come on, it doesn't snow in Sydney.
No, it doesn't
It's
snow in
been
Aussie
it's
at
been
all.
colder in Sydney than yeah, it's in New Zealand at the moment. So yeah, I don't know, a bit of a cold snap at the moment. Fun and games, but still dark.
And Paul,
Looks a
can
lot.
we? I think I saw you speak there, Paul. You're in the UK. How's it all going?
Yeah, all good, all good. It's yeah, very positive over here at the moment. We're all sort of looking forward at the future, and summer rolling on and coming in, and looking forward to getting out and going to some gigs and stuff. But yeah, all
It's
good.
quite funny. Are you having a background of Sydney in the background, but you're actually in the UK?
Yeah, in the UK at the moment, not permanently.
And Naseem, can you hear me? Okay, are we all connected?
Yes, I can. It probably helps that I'm also down under, not that far.
No, it's all amazing, isn't it? All right. Well, look, it's 1 minute past the hour, so let's get into it. So, welcome everybody. I can see there's more people joining, but for those that are on right now, welcome. My name is Scott Mathieson. I'm from working in Australia, and we're here to help you on this journey down under. We've been doing this for over 20 years now. And on the panel today, we have Naseem, Paul, and Brett, who combined with myself have well over 50 years experience in helping people like yourself make the big move to Australia. So welcome and congratulations on this first step. It's a big first step and it's a long journey, but it's worth it. And taking the first step is the most important thing. You know, the coach of my daughter's sports team recently told us turning up is winning, and that's what you guys have done. So congratulations. Look, we know that everybody here is at a different stage in their journey. Maybe this is the first time you've ever thought about immigrating, or maybe you know people in Sydney or Perth, or you've already got a job offer. Whatever it is, we're going to try and keep it as broad as possible. But at the end of it, you will have the opportunity to talk to Paul, who's UK based, and have a consultation with him and see where you're at and see what your possibilities are. The thing about Australia is that there's lots of different opportunities, and even though the borders are closed, there are ways that you can get in right now. And even if you can't get in right now, there's opportunities when the borders reopen. And the time to start is now, because the whole process takes a long time. It's also backlogged because of COVID. So that's a bit of an intro from me. I'm going to introduce you to our panelists now. First, Australian Mara agent, Naseem Lalazari. Naseem, can you please say a few words and introduce yourself to everybody? Thanks.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Naseem. Although I was born overseas, I was brought up in Australia, where I did all my primary, secondary, and tertiary study. I am a registered migration agent for Australia, having gotten my license and basically the ability to be able to provide immigration advice to anyone looking to migrate to wonderful, mostly sunny down under. So over the last 10 years, I've been with Working In and have literally helped thousands of individuals make that move to make Australia home. And I look forward to being able to work with any of you that are on here tonight.
Fantastic. Thanks, Naseem. And in the UK, Paul, can you please introduce yourself? Paul Goddard.
Yeah, my name's Paul Goddard, and as Scott said, I've been helping people emigrate for years. I've been on the journey myself and done it myself as well, and that's obviously a great experience to share. So sort of the way that I come into this is really talking to people about planning the move and, you know, the things that they need to consider around the move itself and how to get to Australia and you know, the lifestyle and what's it like and, you know, that changing lifestyle, adjusting and really just mapping out and planning that move, because it's really important. There's visas and there's jobs, but there's the move itself. And my focus is definitely around the move itself, you know, when it comes to those things.
Fantastic. Yeah. You can spend hours and hours or days or weeks on the internet trawling for information, but if you just really want a direct source, Paul's your man. Okay. And live from Sydney, Brett McAdam. He is our employment specialist based in Sydney. Brett, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name's Brett. I'm based in Sydney. So my role here is I connect employers to international talent, help people from offshore find roles in Australia. I've been in recruitment for around sort of 15 years now. I know what it's like to live overseas. Like, I'm originally from New Zealand, now living in Australia, been over here a while and call this home. I've also lived in the UK and Ireland. So yeah, recruited a number of different roles across a variety of industries over the last sort of 15 years. Yeah, so good sort of breadth of recruitment experience, and yeah, here in sunny Sydney, which doesn't look too sunny out there at the moment, but trust me, it is down here.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we've all seen the TV programs, but we know it's sunny. Okay, so let's get into it. It's there's a lot of information to cover. And I think for those that are on the Zoom, wanting to know what's actually happening in Australia now. Australia and New Zealand have got quite a lot of publicity for closing its borders and managing COVID quite well. Currently, unemployment in Australia is actually below the level as it was pre-COVID, so the job market is very, very active. Nazim, just from an immigration perspective, though, can you kind of give us an overview of what's happening for people who are looking to apply now? And then we'll sort of go into the different options that people might have. But firstly, what's the sort of the overview in terms of COVID and border restrictions? Nazim.
Yeah, so obviously the borders are closed, but like all things, there are exceptions. So the border closure is the generic, I guess, the main thing that everyone hears about, but that what everyone's not aware is that you can still migrate to Australia depending on the different subclass that you can apply for. So the different subclasses and pathways are still open and applications can still be made. And we've been helping people do that over the last even year and a half since COVID's come into play. What we have also been able to do is work with individuals based on their circumstances and depending on which specific migration list they're on or what their employment situation is. In those cases, then you can also apply for an exemption, or you might even just automatically be on the priority list in order to be recruited, get your visa, and then move over to Australia. What's really, really important to know, though, is that migration to Australia is quite a detailed process, and there's lots of additional steps that are required in order to move. And what we find is that everyone gets really, really excited and they want to move and they want to set up their new lives in Australia. Totally understand, wonderful place. But they haven't necessarily done some of that research or looked at all the processes that Paul referred to. Because of that, they're not necessarily equipped and they haven't planned what they need to in order to get that journey underway and have realistic timeframes. So we know everything takes a long time anyway. COVID's made that a little bit longer just because of the documents people might need to obtain. So for anyone that's looking to migrate, it's definitely a possibility. All the subclasses are pretty much still open. Applications can be made. Visas are being approved. Just might be a bit slower than you expected.
And Nazim, do people necessarily need a job offer to get a visa? I mean, what are those two pathways? Because, clearly finding a job when you're offshore is a difficult process, right?
Yeah, it can be. So what's important to note is that migration to Australia, permanent migration, doesn't necessarily require you to have the job offer in order to qualify. And that's quite different to a lot of other Western countries. So we've got temporary work visas in Australia as well as the permanent residence. A lot of the work visas that are just work only are in the temporary space, and those specifically will require a job offer. But to migrate permanently to Australia, you don't necessarily need the job offer in order to qualify for residence. And so we have had some clients, we've got one at the moment who says, I'm going to qualify. We've identified that they qualify for residence, permanent residence. We're going through the process. They're going to get into Australia based on their current occupation and experience, but they're planning to do something completely different once they're in Australia, in no way relevant to their previous experience or qualifications. But that's allowed because that's just because the immigration policies and regulations allow for that in Australia, which is quite good.
Yeah, so but only a certain occupation of people can actually get that residency without a job offer, I see, right? So there must be. Can you just briefly run through kind of what are the prerequisites for that?
So if you have done a little bit of research, you might be aware that there's different occupation lists in Australia. Every occupation list has its own criteria. Some of those occupation lists will just say, we think you're great. You've got the sorts of skills that are desperate around the whole of Australia. Here's an open welcome to come in. Here's your permanent residence. Off you go. There's other ones. So that's like the, it's called the MLTSSL, or the medium long-term skilled shortage list. And then we've got other lists that go along. So you've got the short-term list. And in that situation, you're more likely to require a job offer and or state sponsorship in order to qualify for a visa or permanent residence. Then we've got other lists as well, depending on whether you're going to a region. And there's a lot of lists, and there's a lot that people can be assessed against. Another really important list at the moment is called the PIMSOL, which is the Priority Migration Skilled Occupation List. Sorry, I'm getting some of my acronyms confused. And this one is one that the government has identified that if anyone's offshore anywhere in the world and they've got a job offer in one of these select occupations, that they want to push you to the front of the queue and get you into Australia as soon as they can, so that you can start helping with some of the skill shortages. So
yeah. So if you're a nurse, you're on the PIMSOL, and we want you, right?
Correct.
So yeah.
Nurses, midwives, software engineers, developer programmers, construction project managers. I mean, there's a whole bunch of occupations on the PIMSOL list, and then there's all the other lists as well, which you might also sit on.
Yeah. Yeah, so look at, and as an overview, that's really interesting, Naseem, because you either have a pathway where you get a job, which will allow you to get a temporary visa and eventually residence, or if you're in the right occupation, which we can assess, then you can potentially apply for residency without a job offer. So there's a huge amount of options that are available. And then there's all the state stuff as well, which we're not going to go into right now, but different states can offer residency depending on your occupation, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
They can support your application.
Okay, thank you. So Brett, in terms of the people that are here that will not qualify for residency straight off the bat and would need to get a job offer in order to apply for that temporary visa, can you just give me an idea, or can you give everybody an idea of what the job market's like at the moment? You're, right there in the coalface. What are employers saying to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, unemployment levels in Australia are back to where they were pre-COVID. In fact, I think, the skill shortage is actually probably biting more now than it was pre-COVID. Employers have found, in particular, a lot of people have gone back to their home countries, but people who are from Australia originally, and there is a massive demand for people out there, in particular in healthcare, construction, mining. There's some massive infrastructure projects happening in Australia at the moment. They're absolutely crying out for people. So, for example, if you're a project manager or a construction professional, there's definitely opportunities there. Mining is another huge one. There's massive demand for iron ore, in particular out of Western Australia at the moment. And what employers are telling me here is, they really are sort of recruiting from a limited labour pool. There's definitely a need for people to get into the country and sort of boost those numbers that they can sort of look at people from out there. And it's sort of another thing. It's quite big in Australia at the moment, and it's been happening throughout sort of COVID. There has, outside of the metro, the major cities like your Melbournes, your Sydney's, there's been a big push in the regions, regional Victoria, regional New South Wales, for people as well. And those areas are actually, really sort of promoting themselves as places for people to go live in. and for employers out there, have always traditionally sort of struggled, and they have seen people migrate from the cities. But there is sort of quite a big push for people to go live in those areas outside of, the commonly known Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and that, obviously offer some pretty good lifestyle options. And I think Naseem be able to probably touch on that. Obviously, there's, there can be those regional visas as well that people can potentially look at. So,
yeah. Okay. So it's pretty healthy, really. So I think the thanks, Brett. That's helpful and really interesting, because a lot of other job markets around the world are in a dire situation. So if you do have skills, don't feel as though where you are in your home country is the same as Australia, because Australia actually has a huge shortage, as Brett was saying, and we anticipate that that's going to get more intense as the weeks and months roll by. So, Paul, I guess coming to you now, if people are over, somewhere else in the world, how do they access that job offer? What is the process? Because you've got the sort of chicken and egg situation, isn't it? What can you provide, and how does the process work, especially in terms of what visa do we go for? That is probably the biggest issue the largest amount of questions we get is what visa should we be applying for? So how do we get through all that?
How do we get to that point? Yeah, exactly. Because, as Naseem touched on, the Australian system has so many different options, and people can be eligible for multiple types of visas. And so the first thing you got to do, as you've just pointed out, Scott, is go, well, which one am I eligible for, and which one is the best one? So that's the first thing to find out before, what you don't do is go and randomly fire off CVs to employers, because what they're going to do, and Brett will back this up, and especially at the moment with COVID and border restrictions, is they'll just hit the delete button, because they'll see it's from overseas and go, I don't know if this person's going to get here, when they're going to get here, can they get here, what do I need to do so they can get here? Employers generally, are just interested in running their business. And, so what everyone on here needs is a roadmap. How do you get from where you are to where you want to be? What are the steps you need to take? What are the hurdles you need to overcome? What's your best visa options? What timeframes? All of those questions that I'm sure everybody on here has got, and we've spoken, as over the years to thousands of people, and I don't think there's any question asked yet that we haven't heard before, because we've heard a lot of them. And people like me and well, actually all of us, Naseem, Brett, and all of us, we've all emigrated to other countries, and these questions do repeat. And it's only when you've got the answers to those questions that you can move forward. But it's only when we've got the answers to those questions that we can help you move forward and actually tell the employers that, hey, here's this person, they're skilled, they're eligible, they're ready to go, everything's in place. All you need to do, offer them a job. We'll make sure it runs quickly and smoothly. That's a much better way than just firing off CVs or filling out an immigration form when you don't know if it's the right visa that you're applying for, or even if you meet that criteria. I mean, a side story, before I emigrated, I applied to Australia, did it on my own, read books. This was pre-internet. That's how old I am. Read books, not the internet, all about moving to Australia. Thought, yeah, I know how to do this. And I picked an occupation because it sounded like my job title. I didn't know anything about ANZCO, and some of you on here might not even know what ANZCO is, but I didn't know what it was. Fired it off, lost my money, got declined. Learned the hard way. Don't do it. Don't just go, I've read this on the internet, or I've done that. Get personalized information from experts, from people who help people move all the time about you and your move. That's the first step.
Hey, and Paul, that cost is really important, isn't it? Because moving to Australia, the government costs for visas are pretty expensive, to say the least. And it is going to cost a lot of money. That's before you pay anybody else, like shipping companies, and pet removals companies and such and so forth. I mean, these are obviously, we can refer you to good people in the market, mm-hmm. but there is a lot of cost, and you do want to get it right. So that's that's good information. Paul is more than happy to speak to people that have joined this webinar. So he offers just 10 minutes free, like it's we're happy for you to write questions now. But if you just want that personalisation, you just want to have a quick chat to Paul, ask some of those curly questions that you don't want to ask over the Zoom call, then email us with your CV so we know that you're, not a robot, as you say these days, and then we'll give you Paul's calendar, and you can book a time, 10 minutes or so, just to have a chat with him, and he can guide you in the right direction. No cost. So thanks, Paul. That's awesome. Naseem, for those people that are really engaged, want to move, have made the decision, know that they want out from their existing country, want to move to Australia, what's the first thing and what's the stuff that they should be doing now to get ready? Because there's a backlog. It's going to take time. So there's things that you can do, information that you can gather right now that will be needed. What would you be recommending?
So the very first thing I would obviously be doing is having that chat with Paul, and then having us actually do an assessment to make sure that you do actually qualify. As Paul said, lots of people think that they can nominate a specific occupation, or they can then get the first step in permanent migration, which is something called a skills assessment. So each occupation has its own assessing authority, which has its own criteria in order to get that positive skills assessment. And then after that, what points can you claim, and then, going through that process. Once you've done that, it's really, really important that you can start actually collecting the documents that are required for that skills assessment. So if you're going to have to go back to previous employers, previous institutions, because you don't have all those qualifications and documents on hand, that process of going to third parties and asking them to give you stuff can be quite tiring and can take a bit of time, and it can be stressful if you've only given yourself a short window and you think, oh, well, I need this tomorrow, and they're like, oh, well, we're working on reduced hours on a rostered system. We'll come back to you in 7 to 8 weeks on a Tuesday when someone's in the office and can have a look at it. So what we're finding is that people who need to then collect documents, whether it's qualifications, transcripts, work experience, whatever it might be. One gentleman didn't even have his birth certificate. He'd shredded it. Don't know why. That kind of stuff can take time to collect. And when you've got lots of little things that you're collecting, that takes time. And you've also obviously got your life still going. You've got, your job, your kids, your family, whatever is happening wherever you are. So this is an additional job that's required. So the longer that you have to prepare, the less stressful it will be, the easier the process will feel. So my advice is make sure that you can actually be on your way, and then we'll tell you exactly what you need to get, and then you can give yourself a bit of a buffer and some time to then go and collect those documents.
Yeah, good advice. This does take time. In document collection is the thing that can take the longest. We've heard stories of people contacting their universities or their technical institutes, and months later getting their original certificates or degrees or whatever it might be. So as a first step, once you understand what route you're taking, do that. And then there's medicals and police certificates and all sorts of stuff, birth certificates, as Naseem said. There's quite a lot of, you do need to be organised. So if you're not an organised person, rope in somebody who is a good administration to keep you on check. We've got a checklist, of course, that helps, which just makes it really simple. You just tick all the boxes as you go through. And that's online, so we try and make it as easy as possible. All right, look, I'm quite aware of the time. I just want to go back to Brett though. Brett, there are some people here that are in the healthcare industry, and Naseem talked before about PIMSOL, which is the occupations that are actually in demand now and can come through the borders. One thing to note, and I think that's important to say actually before I go to Brett and Naseem, is that if someone comes in as a nurse, what about their partner?
So partners and dependent children are able to travel with you, and they all get sort of open visas, if that makes sense. So if you're a nurse coming in based on a job offer to Melbourne, you'll have a visa that has conditions that it requires you to work for the employer that's obviously sponsored you, but then your partner will have an open work visa, and then your children, they're probably going to school. So the partners will have open work rights.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So what's quite interesting, we meet people who are electricians or carpenters, and they might not be able to get through the border right now, but we find out that their partner, wife or husband might be in the medical field or a construction manager, and suddenly, they can get in now. So we want to look at all those kind of options. What's the healthcare market like, Brett, in particular, in that regard? Are there roles for nurses and midwives and doctors? I mean, surely there is, but can you just give us an update?
Look, there's probably one of the biggest areas of demand in Australia at the moment. I mean, I think I saw an advert. I have seen an advert just on TV about nurses and midwives and just how stretched they are, and support for them. So it's actually quite topical down here at the moment. How healthcare needs people. Have that the system is pretty stretched out when it comes to people, which is obviously reflected in how people can get in on that PIMSOL visa category at the moment. So definitely a big need. I mean, Australia's always traditionally had quite big sort of campaigns for people from offshore, for nurses in particular, have come down here, whether they've moved permanently, but also quite a few nurses in the past pre-COVID have come down here, or perhaps on a working holiday visa on a temporary basis as part of a around the world trip. And obviously that market has sort of evaporated during the last sort of 18 months. So, and it's right across Australia. It's not, it's metro, it's regional. They're all crying out for people, and so that it is, I think always typically, relied on people from offshore to a certain extent to staff that healthcare industry. So yeah, it's definitely that's probably one of the biggest needs over here at the moment in terms of labour shortages in the healthcare market.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So look, I think what we're trying to say here is that there are a lot of options. You really need to understand what you're going to be doing first. I just want to wrap up now because, we don't want to make this a long webinar. It's just an intro for you all to see whether you really do want to move to Australia, and we hope that you do. Paul, do you have any final words, please?
Yeah, as you said, it's a long road, and it's one that you need to do something to get started on it. Sitting on the internet doesn't really help you move forward. You've got to do something to move forward. Get your CVs off to us. What have you got to lose? Send us your CVs. That could result in a 10-minute call with me on Zoom on a time and date that suits you. That will give you some more clarity. That will then lead on to a full assessment and go from there. And then suddenly you're taking these steps and you're moving forward. If you don't, you'll find that life will get in the way and time will fly by, and then you'll be too old and and can't do it anymore. So don't hang around is my message.
Too old, that's an issue. Nazim, what are the age limits?
So there's no age limit for temporary visas, like the work visa categories. Obviously, working holidays excluded. But for permanent residents, 45 is pretty much the upper limit for permanent residency. However, there are exemptions that can be made depending on your specific occupation and your pay rate, or if you're applying under a specific labour agreement that allowed for an age exemption. So with everything, it's like, these are the base parameters, but depending on you and your circumstances, none of those might apply, and they might all apply. So that's why getting assessed becomes quite important. But in general, 45 for permanent residents under the skilled migrant categories, like the general skill migration and those ones.
Okay, so if I'm 44, am I too late? Do I have to apply before I turn 45 or before I turn 46? Before you turn 45. Before you turn 45. Okay, so the age limit is really 44 and 364 days. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Kinda. Okay, just to be clear, because there will be people on the border, right?
Correct.
Okay, fantastic. So, and any last words from you, Nazim, just as a quick wrap up for everybody that's on the call? If you actually want to be moving, you need to start now. Take that first step. Everything always takes longer than anyone likes. But if you don't do it now, you're just delaying the process later. So get in touch. Send your CV through to Paul so he can help you. Fantastic. Yeah, look, I mean, time is critical, right? And Brett, just final words from you, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just see if you're eligible. See if there's a visa you're eligible for, see if your skills are in demand down here. There's a lot of occupations on that visa list. Take those first steps. Like Paul was saying earlier, don't spray the market with your CV. That won't help. A lot of people do that. Get your visa process underway, and then once that's firmed up, look at partnering with some people to help you with job search down here that can help people from offshore find a role in Australia.
Okay, thanks, Cobber. That's fantastic. So look, just in summary, as an organisation, we don't like to come out and say this is what it's going to cost, and ram down an offering for you. We like to take those little steps where you don't spend money. You're just in that inquisitive stage. You just want to understand where you sit. We're very open to that and very cognizant of that. We've been doing this, as I said, for almost 20 years because we're very fair and we've all done the journey. So at this point in the journey, you've got more questions than answers. And, it's really good to get a lot of those questions sorted, and not through internet, blogs or groups, because, often you hear the wrong information. We are immigration advisors, and you can get the exact information from us. So we really encourage you to send in your CV, request a meeting with Paul in that email, and then we will send you the calendar link. You can have 10 minutes, 15 minutes with him free of charge, and then you can make a decision on where you want to go with your life. But you're here. And so, as I said at the beginning, congratulations, and hopefully you can take the next step. So in the meantime, we wish you good evening or good afternoon, and we hope to work with you again in the future. All the best. Okay, bye-bye.